On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Salil Joshi. He is the VP of Engineering at Viant Technology. We're going to be talking about new managers and, how do you help them succeed, building on their strengths, what they should do in anticipation of becoming a manager. How do you measure a new manager? Salil, I'm excited to have you on the show.
Amir, it's a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you for doing some of these podcasts. I've been through some of your podcasts and they are to the point, really helpful. So thank you for doing this. And any way I can help, always a pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. I guess before we kick it off, let's have you tell everyone, just high level, what does Viant do? And you are the VP of Engineering. What are some of the responsibilities you have before we dive in?
Yeah, so Viant is an advertising platform. It's what we call a demand-side platform for advertising. The way digital advertising typically works is on the one side, you have advertisers who are responsible for, who are interested in putting ads in front of the consumers. On the other side, we have consumers using websites, mobile devices, and so on and so forth, on which ads show up. And whether we like it or not, advertising is a major part of revenue and profits for most of our companies right now. And that's how a bunch of economy runs today. How else would I show you stuff and encourage you to buy stuff that you didn't even know you wanted 2 days ago, right? Advertising. So that's advertising. We are a demand-side software, demand-side platform, which basically means that advertisers use our portal to set up their ad campaigns. We execute those ad campaigns on behalf of our advertisers. Basically, we make sure that we show the right ads to the right set of people at the right point in time and the right number of times. And then we gather any information, meaning how many times did I show the ad? Did somebody click on the ad? Did somebody purchase that ad or the product behind that ad? And we show it back to the advertisers on the portal. So the demand-side platform is responsible for all of this functionality. Right. And that's all we do as Viant. That's our focus, and that's our only focus. We are an advertising company. Within that, my teams are responsible for two major portions. The portal as we know it, as the portal that our advertisers use, that's the responsibility of my team, all of the changes that go there. Any services that are in the backend for making sure the portal keeps up and running with as minimum downtime as possible, that's my team's responsibility. The other part of my team's responsibility is also that for any incoming request for ads, whether it's from a website or whether it's from an app or whatever else, figuring out which ad to show and sending it back to that device or that website. That's the runtime part of our business, the dynamic part of our business. That's also the responsibility of my team. And I've been in Viant just over 5 months today as VP of Engineering, and it's been an awesome ride so far.
Awesome. And I guess the topic, we're talking about new managers and managers that are people moving into management roles and some of what comes with that. And there's a couple areas we're going to touch on. One is, building upon somebody's strengths as an individual contributor as they become a new manager. How do they become well-rounded before they take the job? Because I think that's a big component, right? A lot of times people move into manager roles and they really don't know. I mean, they have no idea what the expectations is. They're just a good individual contributor. A lot of things change. And you've been a manager for a while, and I'm sure you've seen the promotion and career progression of people. When you're looking at that progression and you're looking at people who are moving from whatever level of individual contributor to an actual people manager role, what are to you some of those, well-rounded skills that you'd hope somebody is, stepping up with? Or what are those skills that you're like, you really should be coming into a manager role with?
That's actually over easy 30 minutes of an answer.
There we go. We're going to dive on into this one.
Right. And before I go into any of that, please understand that I've been in the software industry only. So most of everything that I'm going to say is going to be with that lens, is that I've been a software engineer and a software engineering manager forever. So most of my examples are going to revolve around that domain. right? But with that said, typically you wouldn't hire a fresh person from outside the company who has never had any engineering management experience. So most of our managers that, at least within the software industry that exists today, have first tried out management while in the role as an individual contributor. They started off as an IC, an individual contributor, and then transitioned into a manager role, right? And then as an individual contributor, you may have been a developer, you may have been a program manager, you may have been a technical product manager, or you could have been maybe a QA or something, one of those, right? But you're coming into the manager role with one area that has been working well for you. You have been receiving that kind of feedback, and now you think it's time to up level, or well, like trying to try something new, right? The first question I absolutely love to ask my potential managers or people who aspiring managers is that what makes you want to try this role out? And if the answer to that question is not something on the lines of, I enjoy working with people and delivering through people, then it's something that I would love that person to introspect, because managing people is very different from an IC. IC, an individual contributor, always, well, not always, but typically would have instant gratification. You have done your testing, you have done your coding, you have done your design, you have fixed a bug. You go to bed with a very satisfied sense of feeling that you achieved something. As a manager, it's an indirect process, because you don't typically get to deliver something yourself. You have to work with your team, you have to work with individuals within that team in order to be able to deliver that. And if that one level of interaction before you can achieve something is not what you enjoy, or that like it makes you restless, then this may not be the role for you, right? So assuming you've thought this through, assuming that you really do love to work with people and deliver things, then we should get on to the next level, and then let's talking about what does it really take to be an essential and effective manager. And we keep saying manager, but the role of managing is a fairly mechanical responsibility. But you need to be able to differentiate being a manager from being a leader. A leader is somebody who aspires, and that's where you need to go to. Like if you're an IC trying to be a manager, I would always ask my folks to think back about their best experiences. Like who do they think were best managers, good managers, and what did they, if they were to learn something from what they experienced with that person, what would that be? And typically, it there's a quadrant that I draw out for my folks. As an IC, you may have been working on just the tech part of it, or maybe just the program management part of it, right? But as a manager, there are four quadrants that are absolutely necessary for you, and those four quadrants are, you need to understand the people that you are working with, not just the people that report to you, but also your peers, also the product managers, and some of the other functions that you need to work with day in and day out, right? So you have to know the people that you're working with. There are nuances to every personality, so you need to be on top of people management. Separately, there is product. You need to understand what your team is supposed to be building. If you don't have good insights into the product, it's going to be hard to be an aspiring leader, or an inspiring leader, sorry. Right? You need to understand the processes that your organization follows in order to deliver the products that they are building. And sometimes there are processes that are robust and you just need to follow them. Sometimes they need tweaking. Sometimes you need to have some influence from outside and fine tune a process, or like rip it apart and do something else with which is a lot more efficient for your scale. So that's the third quadrant, right? Processes. And finally, there's the tech or the tools that you're using and your entire team is using to deliver, right? So basically, you need to know the people that you're working with, the processes that they follow, and the tools that they use to deliver that set of products. As a manager, you need to have a great handle on all of these four quadrants. So as an IC, it's time to introspect and figure out which of these are your strengths and start playing on those strengths, but also start bleeding into the other areas and acquire information, acquire knowledge, and hopefully even expertise over these other quadrant or other parts of the quadrant that you may not be fully aware of. That's a time when you should definitely seek a mentor. Definitely helps a lot when you have a mentor out there guiding you through all of the process, and ask questions. It's perfectly okay to ask questions.
I was going to say, and with the mentor, it's not always your current manager. It could be somebody outside the org. Is it actually been more beneficial to go outside the org or find somebody external, or is your manager maybe an ideal person to be your mentor? Is there any use cases that you think works either way?
Yeah, if there's a choice, I would prefer outside the org because that's like a third person view at what's going on. That's a lot more cut and dry. But it depends on the scale of the company that you're working with. I wouldn't recommend going outside the company to get mentorship. While that's been useful in certain cases, starting off as a new manager, you may not require that level of support. But outside the org definitely is a good choice.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. When you're looking at the profile of someone who's gone through being an IC to successful manager, and obviously they have some core skill sets and they need to work on things. You listed the four pillars. There's things they need to work on because obviously day one as a manager, they may not have had all those experiences. How do you help identify? How do you start giving those opportunities to start building those skills? And I know you can put somebody in a lead position and give them ownership, but there's still a big gap between I'm leading to leading a team from maybe a semi-technical or semi-people perspective to I am now the manager. Like how do you help someone close the gap in those skills?
It's always a deliberate, thought out, and gradual process to get from point A to point B. If you want to take an example, let's say somebody is a software developer and has been in that role for the past, let's say, 5 years, and has been working with you for the past 2 years, and so has been reporting to you, and you understand that this person has, you know that this person has strong tech chops, has a good understanding of the product, and now has come walking up to you and saying that he or she is interested in trying out the tech role of a tech manager role. Always roll it out gradually. You already know that the tech part is well covered. You understand that the product he or she has been working on the product for some time, so they understand the product well. So what are the missing areas of the, like, go back to the quadrant, and the quadrant looks like the process part as well as the tools part may be missing because maybe this person is familiar with using the the technical tools, but maybe not familiar with using tools such as how do you what are the systems that you use to rate employees and to evaluation for employee evaluation and so on and so forth. So start with the gradual process. The way I have done this in my past is I've had maybe 2 or 3 people start reporting to this person at the beginning. And even while these people are reporting to this person, the manager is only responsible for some parts of the manager activities. So I would expect this person to be able to provide me performance feedback. I would expect this person to run the weekly one-on-ones with the 3 people that are reporting to this person, and then during my one-on-ones with this person, I would kind of groom the manager to figure out whether they're asking the right set of questions during their one-on-ones. Are they keeping it open enough? Are they evaluating the candidate or not candidate, their reportees? Are they evaluating them? Are they giving them the right kind of opportunities? So, start with one quadrant at a time with a small set of people. Checkpoint every often, at least once every 2 weeks. Checkpoint, make sure this is going in the right direction, and incrementally add more layers of the management responsibility. It typically takes anywhere between 2 quarters to 4 quarters for this person to from the time the person started on this journey to be able to fly solo. And what's most important in this, all of this is the I have had multiple times I have had the need to drill down the realization that as a manager, context switch comes with the job. Like as an IC, you would have like 6-7 hours of a day to do just one task. As a manager, that's almost never going to happen. As a manager, you have to be on switching gears across these quadrants, across different products, different projects, different personalities. So that realization, I can talk about it a lot of time, but it doesn't really dawn on to you until you start doing it. So you have to really gradually walk through all of this.
And that's interesting. I think we're talking about, obviously areas somebody can focus on. New skills they have to develop. Context switching, for example, is one of those, and it is very inefficient. I mean, you don't realize your day is gone and it's been broken up, and you haven't gained any efficiency because you don't have that solid stretch of work you can do. As you're kind of trying to help a new manager understand that and to actually appreciate that, I guess there's one danger, right? Like anybody who does something new, there is a risk of imposter syndrome because they want to look the part. They want to, what is it? Fake it till you make it.
Till you make it, yeah.
Right. And you're talking about multiple quarters, and you're talking about rounding out skill sets, learning context switching. When you're talking to your managers in their one-on-ones or new managers in their one-on-ones, what are you looking for to know if they're really understanding what they need to do versus them saying yes and then going and being lost, that imposter syndrome piece?
That's interesting. You give me a moment to think through this. So what am I looking for during my one-on-ones with new managers, right?
Yeah, we want to be able to detect, because the last thing, the thing that's not going to help anyone is for someone to say yes. And it's done accidentally, right? Because we all sometimes go, well, I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm going to see if I just give myself a little time, I'll figure it out. And before you know it, a couple of weeks have passed, and then it's too late to say you don't know it because time has passed and people are assuming you know it. It's like somebody's first name. If you forget their first name, within the second time, if you ask them, it's okay. If you've gone to lunch with the group 5 or 6 times and you ask the first name, then it's really awkward. So
that's true.
So it's very similar to the same point, I guess.
So there's this framework. Well, it's not exactly a framework. There's this construct that I've been using forever, and I like to call it AMC. Align, measure, and communicate. So when I have assigned, let's say, 3 people to my new manager, and that new manager is working with these people to get some stuff to be delivered, I've delegated some of my responsibilities to my new manager. And those responsibilities are always going to, like, anything I'm doing or my team is doing always has to track back to what is my org expected to be doing. And my org will track its goals back to what is the company expected it to be doing, right? So there's that hierarchy where, we have a vision that translates to something that the org is doing, that translates to something that the team needs to be doing. And that translates part of that distills to what my new manager is going to run with, right? So I start off typically with, how is this piece of work going? And that will expose questions that need to be answered. What exactly are you working on? I think that's very clear between you and me. Now, how are you executing it? How are you measuring whether you are on the right track? If you're building a design and you're going to be eventually, one of your team members is putting a tech design together and then you're going to go implement it. Have you split it into tasks? How are your tasks looking? Are these tasks are they 4-week long tasks? If it is, then you're doing something wrong. You need to have tasks that are typically not more than 5 days long, so that if it gets delayed, you can arrest the delay right away. When I'm asking these questions to my manager, what is your team telling you? Are they comfortable with what's going on? Have you heard Are there any red flags that you are seeing in the way they are operating? And then I also have skip levels with my with the three people, because remember, they were reporting to me before, and now I've split it and they have started reporting to this person. So I have skip levels with them, and I'm asking them questions on how's it going so far? Are you getting the right kind of guidance? I'm telling my manager to curb the need to, like, you were an IC before, so you have that inherent bias where you need to jump in and fix things, right? But you're a manager now. You need to get it delivered through somebody else. So are you helping that person grow? And are you asking the right kind of questions and pointing that person to the right direction instead of taking control? These are the kind of discussions I would have typically in my one-on-ones with my manager. How have you communicated your goals effectively to your team? Are you measuring how they're progressing towards their goals? And then are you communicating the status of the progress so far, not just to me, not just to your team, but whoever the stakeholders are? Are you getting the right set of people in the room? Are you making sure, if you see a check-in from somebody every day at 2 a.m. in the morning, that's a red sign. Have you talked to them about it? Are your people feeling overworked? Are you overworked? How are you liking the overall job? Like that's the, I think, as a people manager, one of the most important qualities is to be able to ask the right questions. And I think one-on-ones is my mechanism of getting us there and asking the right questions, hopefully using mechanisms like align, measure, and communicate to reveal what may or may not be going right and course correct when necessary.
I guess when it comes to, we're talking about measuring the manager, we're talking about metrics. How do you view metrics for a new manager or a person recently promoted to a management position? Are the metrics different? How do you adjust? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, they are very different, and it can be counterintuitive at times, because even this new manager was used to a situation where I had I have done 5 designs in the last year. I have reviewed pull requests for 50 people, or I have reviewed 50 pull requests, and I have done these many lines of code, and I've fixed these many tickets, and these are the products that I have released. Those were the metrics that were used to determine the effectiveness of this individual contributor. Now suddenly it's becoming very ambiguous, because now we are looking at, has there been attrition in your team? When we are running, let's say, every quarterly we are running surveys about how does the team feel, how are individual anonymous surveys, how does the team feel, how's that number trending for you on various factors? Are you able to deliver the product or the feature that was assigned to you by working with your direct reports? Is there any signs of burnout, or is there any signs which suggest that only one person is pulling the weight while the others may or may not be doing effectively? Are you able to evaluate and provide constructive feedback without any known bias creeping into it? Because, like, if you have been working with one person for the past 3 years, now that person is reporting to you versus the other two are new hires. There's a possibility a positive or a negative bias may creep into your evaluation. Are you arresting your bias in time? Are you, taking steps to taking steps to make sure that doesn't happen? So it becomes very, very ambiguous in terms of evaluation. So the metrics that I look for, like the absolutely important metrics that I look for, is attrition is a red flag. If you're not able to push product, like, since you're a new manager, comparatively lesser scoped features are being assigned to you. If they're being pushed out on time with the right quality, that's awesome. If some of that is missing, then maybe there's one quadrant that needs to be focused on. Maybe you did everything that you needed to do technically, but you didn't have the process in place to roll it out fluently. So maybe that's the quadrant that I would love to double click on and add some more training or some more coaching in that area. So that's the way I would. That's well. So that's the metrics and that's the evaluation process that I would go for a new manager.
And I think that's actually interesting. And I was actually as you're talking about this, and you're kind of talking through the metrics, and this person's got to learn how to apply those metrics themselves and round out their skill and everything we've talked about. There's I guess one other component that kind of exists that new managers go through that you don't always talk about, but I think it's critical. I see it where I'm in a recruiting company. I see this all the time. Is you see obviously people in senior tech leadership, IC roles on interview panels. You see them provide their feedback. They technically assess, but when they become first-time managers and they're hiring, I've noticed it's different. There's obviously they feel a lot of pressure to hire well. They want to improve their team. There's a lot of pressure on them, right? Like this, they're doing this for the team for the first time. They don't want to make a mistake either, and I feel for them because you can sense they are making it extremely difficult for themselves. I mean, you can tell sometimes. Not everyone. No, I don't want to stereotype everybody, but I do see this from time to time. I guess talk about that component of it, right? When you're a new manager and you're looking to hire, you can put a lot of pressure on yourself to make sure you get it right, hit it out of the park. You hire that quote unquote, A+ player, elevates the team. That's hard for any manager to do, let alone first time through.
It is. And if I could take a quick diversion here, the one part that I always keep saying to anybody who is fresh to interviewing is not about what you know. It's about what the person in front of you knows and whether that person can apply it to the role that you're hiring for. That's where you need to start. And where you need to end is for this person, if this person was on my team, would that be a net positive? Would that be non consequential, or would that be a net negative? And that should help you answer the question of should we hire or should we not hire? The answer should never be maybe. It's either yes or it's no. And I would expect that from anybody who is interviewing. But let's switch back to your core question. As a new manager, this can go two ways. One is that I'm under immense pressure to hire. I want to grow my team, so I would lower my bar and I would hire a candidate that the data suggests is not the ideal fit. That's the one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is that I'm looking for 100% or 105% fit for that role so that it's a slam dunk. And that also may or may not pan out well, right? So really what you want to let your new managers know is that there is not always going to be a situation where you'll get 100% fit. So before you get into your hiring rounds or your, at least your interview debrief rounds, what are the 5 aspects that you really want and are important from the candidate that you are hiring? What is the role? What are the 5 most important aspects that this candidate needs to deliver? And of those 5, are there any if I were to ask you to stack rank those 5 aspects, which 2 of those 5 are you ready to negotiate for? And that's the framework that you should apply to evaluating a candidate based on the debrief. Always have more than one person talk to the candidate. I'm not a big fan of multiple people talking to a candidate at the same time. I think it's just too much of a pressure cooker situation. So have multiple people, have at least 3 people talk to the candidate. Make sure that they know beforehand what the evaluation criteria are. Once they are done talking to the candidate independently, ask them to submit their feedback before they have talked to each other. Let's not have them bias each other's opinions. Let's have them submit their feedback independently. Then let's get into a room and talk. While you're talking through it, have your framework in place. Here's the 5 criteria I absolutely need. of those five, I can see that 1, 2, and 3 are checked well. So look like this is definitely a positive leaning candidate. Let's talk about that other two that are not exactly aligning with what you were what you were expecting out of the candidate. Is that a big deal? Is that a deal breaker? If it is not, maybe it's worth taking the risk. So there's always has to be a thin balance. If you want to err, you want to err on the side of caution, but that's also something that can be corrected. It's not like you'll only get one candidate and you'll never get to interview anybody else. So it's okay to start off with a higher bar and then lower it after consultations if that's what is necessary. Sometimes it's just a matter of you have to wait. You just don't find the right candidate even after you have done the appropriate amount of level adjustments, and it is what it is. You might want to wait for some more time, but there's it's it's likely that you may swing one way or the other, and it has to be a process where uh, you consult. Well, you have multiple people evaluating. You have a framework going into the conversation, so you know what you are ready to compromise on, and it's okay to lower the bar gradually.
I'm a rare recruiting company owner that was a software engineer, worked in the BI space. So when I'm hearing you talk about this framework for hiring as a new manager, and I'm like, oh, it almost sounds like test driven development. Go write those criteria first, so that you know definitively what to look for versus go interview and then start evaluating, do they fit a criteria? Because you do get biased. You get biased in terms of, well, this person was good in these areas. And then that bias is hard because you don't have that initial framework of, hey, I need to see these things. What you ask for is different. So I think that's very interesting because most engineers are well aware of that kind of that framework. So I think that's an interesting.
And one thing that just popped up in my mind is, and this is something I keep iterating over and over again. When you're hiring, you're looking for an absolute yes or an absolute no. It's not relative. It's not like you interviewed five candidates and you choose one of them that you thought was the best. I mean, in that case, you might end up hiring the best from the worst. That's the worst case situation. That's not how it should be. Here's my absolute criteria that need to be met. As long as they are met, I would hire the first person to clear that criteria. I cannot oh, this person has cleared the criteria, but let me sit on it and find one more. Oh, this also has cleared the criteria. Oh, let me still continue interviewing. That shouldn't be. It's an absolute yes or an absolute no.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast. And actually, you just inspired me. I think I got to put a roundtable together. I've been making a list of roundtable ideas, and one of them you just talk is about. I want to talk about hiring, and I want to talk about this notion of let me see the next one. Let me see the next one, and it's challenging because time kills all deals, and the person that was there might not be there. You're bird in the hand, two in the bush type scenario, but then you don't want to hire incorrectly. So it goes back to what you said: have that criteria. Whoever is the first person that clears that set that you want to hire for, then obviously it becomes a lot easier to say, okay, I found the right person versus trying to assess and go, well, the next person might be better. That might be true, but you also might not be able to hire them. They might not want your job or take the offer, all those variables that could exist. But I like it. I like the overview. Thank you. I know you got to get back to it, so I'm going to wrap up with you. I appreciate your time. It's been fantastic. I think you could talk 30 minutes on each of these points alone because you got a fantastic background, and I appreciate all your insights. I like to ask all my guests this question. And it's basically, if you could ask a future guest on the show to cover a topic that you'd be interested in hearing about, what would you like to learn more about?
The one thing that haunts me once every often is this concept of definition of done, and the definition of done as it applies to software has been the topic of discussion a billion times at least. And there's so many different perspectives to it. As an engineer, what do I define? What do I call done? As a product manager, what do I call done? As somebody who is in the sales team, what do they understand by the definition of done? And how is it even possible for all of us to align on one definition of done, or is it steps of incremental definitions that need to be put on one or put on top of one another. But there's multiple aspects when you look at the definition of done. And I think what would be really, really interesting is understand from somebody who's like a scrum master as to, what is the definition of done, but more importantly, how do you imbibe in the engineering or a culture of internalizing definition of done and going back to it at the end of every single task that they complete, and really making sure that when it's done, it's done. I think it's an, as much as it's an engineering need, it's an art to get there. And I haven't cracked the holy grail to imbibe that culture in my team without ambiguity. I would love some information. Like I would love some practical pointers on that.
What's a good way, if somebody wants to reach out to you and talk to you about something, what's a good way of getting hold of you?
Best way is LinkedIn. I'm not much of a social media person, so I don't have like a Twitter and a Instagram account, but LinkedIn works.
So thanks for being on, man. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me, Amir. And you're doing something really helpful. Please continue doing it. Anything I can help, don't hesitate to reach.
Awesome. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you again. That's it for this episode. Back again, different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, if you are a Scrum Master and you know the definition, not that you have a perspective on this definition of done in software. And I really like the idea of different stakeholders have different timelines and different definitions of what done is for themselves. I'd like to have you on. I think that really helped the community. I'm an ex-certified Scrum Master because my it's lapsed. It's been a long time, but I'd love to actually learn a little bit more self. It's been a while. I think it'd be a great topic. So please reach out to me if you could help us out with that topic. Secondly, if you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with somebody else. Leave a review, subscribe, comment, whatever you like. I mean, that all helps grow the podcast. That helps kind of spread the podcast. And that's how it's been growing thus far. And I can't thank everyone that does that enough. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.